Welcome to docx, your movie recap in a flash. We bring the drama, the action, and the twists in minutes. The series begins thousands of years ago in a small village in Japan called Maruka. We learn that the village's population is very small but unique because they possess a supernatural power. They can create smoke spheres with their hands, which make anything they touch disappear. The villagers keep to themselves and isolate themselves from the world to protect the secret of their power. One day, the king of the Japanese tribes, named Chima, decides to attack the village of Maruka. He gathers a massive army to destroy the village after killing the village chief, Nanmaru. The villagers, numbering less than 100 people, come together to defend their village, and with the use of their supernatural powers, they manage to annihilate the king's army of over 3,000 in seconds. The king is killed by Masayori, the new tribal chief. In the present day, in Tokyo, we meet a young man named Yuji, who also possesses a supernatural power. He can create smoke spheres that make anything they touch disappear. However, he is unaware of the full extent of his power, as he is still a beginner, only able to make small holes in paper or glass cups. This makes his power seem trivial. We learn that Yuji and his friends have formed a secret club for supernatural powers, as his friends wish to have powers like Yuji, their university friend. One day, while Yuji is filming his powers to upload a video on YouTube, one of his friends, Aki, tells him that his powers are trivial and that he should look for a real job since he's in his final year of university and about to graduate. Yuji agrees with her and decides to appoint a new leader for the secret club so he can focus on finding a job. However, no one agrees to lead the club. A member named Asano tells Yuji that his powers are trivial and decides to leave the club to find a real job. The next day, Yuji receives a letter from a university professor named Masami asking him to visit his office. Yuji goes to the professor's office, where he meets the professor's assistant, Amy. She welcomes Yuji and tells him that the professor is not present as he went on a journey and has not returned. Amy reveals that she sent the letter because she wants to discuss an important matter with him. We learn from her that Yuji and the professor are related, as both are originally from the village of Maruka. Amy asks Yuji to help her find the missing professor, but Yuji is confused and tells her he will think about it and get back to her. The next day, Yuji returns to Amy's office and agrees to help her, even though he knows nothing about his connection to the village of Maruka. Amy, along with her students Tagaya and Sako and Yuji, travel to the village of Maruka. In the village, they ask locals if anyone has seen Professor Masami, but no one recognizes his picture. Meanwhile, a girl named Tsuchi has a nightmare about drowning. She wakes up frightened. Tsuchi is the granddaughter of the current village chief, but lives with her grandmother. She has a brother named Takashi, who inherited supernatural powers from their ancestors. However, he was exiled from the village long ago because he killed their father as a child, using his powers after their father mocked him, calling his powers trivial. The next day, Tsuchi goes to her job at a cafe in the village. During her shift, two outsiders, Yuji and Tagaya, enter the cafe. Tagaya asks the cafe patrons about the professor, but no one recognizes him. As they are about to leave, the villagers overhear Yuji's full name, Yuji Nanmaru, and realize he is a descendant of the former village chief, Nanmaru. The villagers warmly welcome Yuji, treating him like royalty out of respect for his grandfather, who was a great man. They invite him to a house where the village's important figures gather, serve him the best food, and treat him with the utmost respect. Yuji feels happy for the first time, feeling like an important person. During their conversation, the police arrive to investigate the murder of a real estate employee in the village, who was killed the previous day at work. The detective claims the murderer is someone with supernatural powers and asks the villagers for help in identifying the killer. However, the villagers appear uneasy, as if they know who the murderer is, but refuse to reveal it. They expel the detective and his team. The next day, Yuji and his friends climb the mountain where the festival will be held in 2 days, hoping to find Professor Masami or clues to his whereabouts. On their way to the summit, they encounter a group of villagers surprised to see them on the mountain, as climbing is prohibited during the festival days. However, they allow Yuji to continue because he is the grandson of the former tribal chief. Before reaching the summit, they find 7 oddly arranged rocks. They don't recognize the type of rocks or the reason for their arrangement, so they descend the mountain and return to the village. The next day, Yuji goes to the cafe where Tsuchi works and asks for her number, as he plans to return to university after attending the village's festival. Tsuchi asks him to meet her at the festival before he leaves, because she has important information to share with him. After their conversation, Yuji thanks her for the coffee and leaves. On his way home, he notices a man with half his face covered. Yuji feels a strange sense of familiarity with the man, as if he has seen him before, but he continues walking without speaking to him. The next day at the festival, Yuji meets Tsuchi. She begins by mocking Yuji's powers and warns him not to trust the villagers. She advises him to return to his normal life and not stay in the village, even though the villagers might train him to develop his powers and appoint him as the new village chief. She explains that while he would enjoy a royal life and get anything he desires, he would never be able to leave the village afterward. She urges him to return to university and never come back to the village for any reason. Meanwhile, Amy and her students are enjoying the festival, but notice a strange light on the summit of Mount Marukami. She asks Tagaya to accompany her to the summit to uncover its mystery. The strange light, and of course, no one is allowed to climb the mountain during the festival days, but she doesn't care about that and continues her way. At the mountain peak, Amy sees the same rocks they saw when they climbed the mountain 2 days ago, but this time there are only 6 rocks, meaning 1 is missing. So Amy continues her way to the summit to discover what exactly is happening in this strange village. At the mountain peak, she finds a group of masked people, each holding a torch and striking it on the ground. In the middle of the circle stands a person, also masked like them, but his clothes are more elegant. We understand that what they're doing is appointing a new leader for the village, and the new leader is the person in the center of the circle. Amy recognizes him by his eyes, and it turns out to be Dr. Masami, but he is masked. At that moment, Amy trips over a tree trunk and makes a sound that draws the attention of the masked people. They chase her and her companion to punish them, because no one is allowed to reach the mountain peak at that time. When the masked people catch Amy and recognize her, they reveal their faces. It turns out they are the villagers, and they tell Amy that this is their annual celebration ritual. They order Amy to descend the mountain so they can continue their celebration. Amy asks them about the doctor, but no one responds to her, and they leave. At that moment, the person Yuji saw on his way home during the festival, with half of his face covered, appears. This person is Takashi, Tsuchi's brother. Takashi possesses supernatural powers, but uses them for evil. We learn that all the villagers hate him because he killed his father when he was young. We flash back to Takashi's past, seeing his father mocking his supernatural power. We learn that his father treated him this way because he doubted Takashi was his son. This is because Takashi's mother loved the village leader, Yuri. However, she couldn't marry him because the village leader must marry someone from the lineage of previous leaders. So Takashi's mother married another man and had a child with him. But her husband didn't have supernatural powers, which made him suspicious of his wife because their son, Takashi, did. Supernatural powers are supposed to be inherited from one's parents. What Takashi's father didn't know is that his wife also had supernatural powers, but kept them hidden from everyone. When Takashi grew tired of his father's treatment and used his supernatural powers against him, he killed him. This event destroyed their family, as Takashi's mother, after her husband's death, asked Yuri to use his power to make her disappear. Because Yuri loved her, he agreed and made her disappear. After her death, Yuri left the village and lived in another city. We return to Takashi as an adult, who decided to use his supernatural powers for evil. We see Takashi treating Tsuchi's sister harshly, as if she were the reason he was banished from the village. One day, while drunk and wandering the village streets, Takashi bumps into 3 young men. The young men beat him, and one of them tries to uncover Takashi's face, revealing a jewel on his forehead. This jewel distinguishes those with supernatural powers from others. Takashi overreacts and uses his powers to cut off the legs of the 3 young men because they saw the jewel. A few days later, Takashi visits Yuji's university. When Yuji meets him, he recognizes him immediately because he had felt a strange sensation when he passed by the cafe in the village and wanted to talk to him then but didn't. Takashi offers to teach Yuji how to develop his supernatural power on the condition that Yuji works for him. Yuji agrees, and the training begins. On the first day, Yuji manages to use his supernatural power easily, though he initially could only make a hole in a piece of paper. After training, he can easily make half a bucket disappear. Yuji feels thrilled and important, believing he can change the world with his power. At the end of the day, Yuji tells Tsuchi about his day and mentions that Takashi is training him to develop his power. But Tsuchi warns him to stay away from Takashi because he uses his power for evil and is only training Yuji to exploit him for money later. Yuji becomes anxious, unsure of what to do. At that moment, Takashi calls him and asks to meet the next day. The following day, Takashi proposes they hold seminars to showcase Yuji's power to the public. Yuji agrees because he trusts Takashi and also needs money, as this would be his first job. The seminars begin the next day, and everyone attending is impressed by Yuji's supernatural power. Yuji earns 300,000 yen from his first seminar, causing him to neglect his studies and focus more on developing his power. Meanwhile, Professor Amy is in Maruka village, searching for Dr. Masami. While sitting and reminiscing about her memories with the doctor, she receives a call from an unknown number. It's Dr. Masami, who tells her he is fine, but cannot meet her and may never be able to see her again. He asks her to return to the university and resume her life as usual, bidding her farewell before ending the call. The next day, Amy returns to the university, having lost hope of the doctor's return. After a few days, we see Yuri, the supernatural-powered former leader of Maruka village. Yuri had been away from the village for many years because he used his powers for evil. When Yuri became the village leader, he began using his supernatural powers excessively, which caused his physical appearance to change strangely. He developed 6 fingers on each hand instead of 5 and grew a jewel on his forehead, distinguishing those with supernatural powers from ordinary people. His facial features also changed, giving him the face of a falcon. Because of this, Yuri always hides his face so people won't fear him. Yuri constantly feels lonely because everyone sees him as an evil person and avoids him. He also suffers from nightmares every night, reminding him of his next mission in life. We learn that the supernatural-powered individuals from Maruka village learn their missions through visions in their sleep. If a vision isn't fulfilled within a certain time, it turns into nightmares that haunt the individual until they complete the mission. Because Yuri refused to fulfill one of his visions, it turned into a nightmare that haunts him daily. Yuri becomes depressed and turns into a madman, obsessing over killing anyone who threatens Japan or Maruka village. We also learn that Yuri loved Takashi's mother, but he couldn't marry her because she was from an ordinary family, and according to tradition, he had to marry someone from the leader's lineage. Yuri was the one who trained Takashi when he was young to develop his superpowers, which made Takashi loyal to him, helping him with everything. Yuri secretly worked with an old businessman, and his mission was to eliminate all the man's enemies. One day, Yuri and his manager, Masimoto, attended a meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. Yuri used his superpowers to kill the Prime Minister and quickly escaped the scene. The next day, he went to the old man he worked with and told him it would be his last mission, as he planned to work for himself from then on. Yuri left the place and walked away. He became unhinged and decided to kill anyone who threatened Japan or made decisions that could negatively impact its future. A few days later, Yuji was on his way to university when he saw a woman calling for help to save her son. Her son was unconscious in the car, which he had accidentally locked with the keys inside. Yuji decided to help, using his powers to create a hole in the car window and rescue the child. He quickly fled the scene before anyone could identify him. However, people had recorded him saving the child, and the video spread online. The media talked about the superhero who saved the child, but luckily, Yuji's face wasn't visible in the video. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to walk the streets due to the number of fans. After the video spread, Takashi decided to take advantage of the moment and use Yuji's superpowers everywhere, leaving marks in schools, universities, and even hospitals to make people talk more about the superhero who saved the child and convince them of his existence. This would also allow Takashi to earn more money from Yuji and his revealed powers. A few days later, Takashi decided to kill his business partner to take all the money from the seminars Yuji conducted. The next night, he waited for his partner in the garage under the company to kill him. He hid until the partner appeared, but before he could kill him, two people dressed in black appeared, claiming to be police officers there to arrest Takashi's partner. The partner refused to go with them and tried to escape. The following morning, at the police station, Detective Sato was investigating the murder of two police officers who went missing the previous night in the company's garage. Sato was convinced the killer was someone with superpowers. He went to the crime scene to investigate and met Aki, Yuji's university friend, who worked at the company. Aki told him she knew two people with superpowers, Yuji and Takashi. She offered to help solve the case, as she had always wanted to be a journalist since she was young. Sato agreed to let her help, and they arranged another meeting. At the same time, Takashi organized a seminar for Yuji to showcase his superpowers to the public. During the seminar, the people of Maruka village arrived to stop Takashi, accusing him of exploiting Yuji. However, the seminar attendees defended Takashi because he had deceived them into believing they could also acquire superpowers one day. Tsuchi tried to speak with her brother to convince him to stop his actions, but Takashi became furious upon seeing her and decided to kill her. Before he could use his powers, Yuri appeared. Despite being a killer who had abandoned the village when disasters struck, the villagers still loved him. Yuri wanted to take Takashi away, but stopped when he saw Yuji. Yuri wanted to use his powers to kill Yuji, but Tsuchi stood in his way to protect him. Yuri relented but threatened Yuji, saying he would kill him if he saw him again. That night, Yuji met with the villagers, who warned him to stay away from Takashi and Yuri, as they used their powers for evil and would exploit Yuji's powers before killing him. Yuji thanked them for their help and walked with Tsuchi before she returned to the village. It was evident that Yuji was fond of Tsuchi, but he didn't express his feelings. Yuji suggested Tsuchi move to Tokyo with him, as she had lived her entire life in the countryside and was unaware of many things. However, Tsuchi refused because Maruka village was her home, and the villagers couldn't leave due to a curse that would turn them into evil beings, like Yuri and Takashi. Tsuchi admitted she had always wished for a normal life, or to have been born somewhere other than Maruka village. She told Yuji he needed to return to his normal life and forget everything about their village. Later that day, Tsuchi decided to confess her secrets to Yuji. She revealed that her brother Takashi had been very angry as a child due to their father's treatment, believing their father loved her more. This led Takashi to try to harm her in any way possible, even using his superpowers on her in an attempt to kill her. However, she survived each time, which only made him hate her more. Tsuchi showed Yuji the scars on her back, caused by Takashi's attacks when she was a child. These scars made her resent superpowers and those who possessed them, which is why she didn't want Yuji to become like her brother. The next day, Tsuchi met with Professor Amy and gave her 2 letters from Dr. Masami. The letters contained a strange message, which only Professor Amy could understand. Meanwhile, Yuji applied for a job at a cleaning company. On his first day, he met a careless employee named Ocho, who often got into trouble at work. Ocho acted like he was the company manager, conducting Yuji's interview and teaching him the job. At the same time, Yuri was hiding in a house in Tokyo, waiting for the UN Secretary-General to pass by so he could assassinate him. Takashi and Masimoto were with him, ready to assist if needed. Meanwhile, Sato and Aki arrived at the same house to spy on Yuri and Takashi and uncover their exact plans. But Aki makes a sound that leads Masimoto's men to discover their presence, and they arrest Sato and Aki, imprisoning them in the cellar until Masimoto decides when to kill them. Yuri goes to the top of a tower in Tokyo and creates a massive ball of smoke, directing it toward a huge tower in the city center. As soon as the ball touches the tower, it disappears, along with 150 people who were inside before Yuri vanishes. At that time, Sato and Aki are still in the house's cellar, and one of Masimoto's men tortures Sato to stop him from pursuing them, even breaking Sato's finger and leaving him bleeding, threatening to kill him or Aki if he doesn't talk. At the end of the day, Yuji returns home to find a hole in the door. He rushes inside and finds Takashi waiting. For the first time, Takashi feels guilt and tells Yuji that Yuri was responsible for the tower explosion and the deaths of those inside. He apologizes to Yuji for everything bad he caused or helped Yuri with, explaining that he was only trying to help him develop his superpower without superpower exploiting him. Takashi recounts his childhood and his father's unjust treatment, which shaped his bad personality, blaming his father for turning him into a villain. He asks Yuji to apologize to Tsuchi when he meets her, and to tell her that her brother loved her, but couldn't express it because of their father's treatment. Due to his hatred for their father, Takashi tried to forget his anger by hurting Tsuchi and using his superpower on her. However, he now feels guilty and wants to apologize to his sister, though he can't face her again. Takashi tells Yuji that Aki is imprisoned in a building in the city center, gives him the address to rescue her, and then leaves the house. The next morning, Yuji goes to the cellar in the city to rescue Sato and Aki. While escaping, one of the guards tries to shoot Yuji, but Yuji uses his superpower to kill the guard. He feels guilty for becoming a killer, but justifies it by saying he did it to save his friends. He vows never to use his superpower again for any reason. Later that day, Yuri decides to destroy a building in the city center, putting all of Tokyo under lockdown. No one is allowed to leave their homes during the curfew to avoid harm, as Yuri has lost control, and no one can manage him or his power. During this time, the villagers contact Yuji and Professor Amy, asking them to visit Maruka village to help the villagers stop Yuri. The next morning, Yuji and his friends travel to Maruka village, where they meet a superpowered individual who was the previous village leader before Dr. Masami. The former leader explains that Yuri must be stopped, or he will destroy the entire world. He reveals that only Yuji can stop him, as he is the last descendant of the leader Nanmaru, who saved the world and Maruka village over 1,000 years ago. This means history is repeating itself, and now Yuji must take on his ancestor's role to save the world, using his power. The village leader asks them to gather the next day at his house to plan Yuri's defeat. The next morning, the villagers head to the leader's house with Yuji and his friends. Meanwhile, Yuri is at the leader's house with Takashi, returning to the village to carry out a mission that has turned into a nightmare, haunting him in his sleep. He tells the leader that he is responsible for all the recent incidents in Japan, including killing the construction company employee to protect the village from change, as the company wanted to demolish the mountain in the village center to build a club. At this point, Masimoto and his men arrive to kill Yuri, shooting randomly. The village leader kills Masimoto, and Takashi is shot in the abdomen while trying to escape with Yuri into the forest. In the forest, Takashi collapses from exhaustion, nearing death from the bullet wound. In his final moments, Takashi tells Yuri that he wanted to apologize to his sister before dying, and asks Yuri to apologize to Tsuchi if he ever sees her, telling her that her older brother loved her. Takashi dies in the forest, and Yuri continues to flee before Masimoto's men catch him. Meanwhile, the villagers arrive at the leader's house to find him dead, and signs of many corpses on the ground. Tsuchi follows the blood trail to the forest, where she finds her brother Takashi dead. She breaks down despite her hatred for him, knowing he acted that way because of their father's treatment during his childhood. Yuji tries to console her, telling her that Takashi asked him to apologize on his behalf and ask for her forgiveness for everything he did to her. The next day, the villagers gather to plan Yuri's defeat, as it is not easy to overcome his superpower. During their discussion, Kati, Tsuchi's grandmother, appears and asks Yuji to come with her to hide him in a safe place under the new village leader's orders. When Amy hears the leader's name, she asks to meet him, but Kati refuses, explaining that the new leader cannot appear yet and will only do so after the previous leader's death. Since the previous leader is now dead, Masami can appear anytime he wishes. Amy returns to the leader's house and finds a symbol on the door resembling an extinct bird associated with the village. She recalls an email from the doctor sent with Tsuchi and spends the night pondering the connection between the doctor's message and the symbol before her. The next morning, Yuji is at Kati's house, hiding to avoid harm. However, the police arrive to arrest Yuji, as they are detaining anyone with superpowers to help capture Yuri. Kati delays the police, allowing Yuji and Tsuchi to escape. That night, the villagers gather at the meeting hall in the center of the village where the police are heavily stationed to kill Yuri if he appears at any time. At the same time, Masamoto and his men arrive under orders from their leader. The three parties agree on one thing: they must eliminate Yuri because he will destroy the world if no one stops him. However, each party has a different approach to dealing with Yuri. Masamoto wants to kill him, the police want to imprison him, and the villagers want to talk to him without harming him, knowing that he was one of them once upon a time. At this point, Dr. Masami, the current leader of the village, appears. Yuji and Tsuchi also appear, trying to convince the villagers that they all need to help each other to defeat Yuri, as Yuri possesses supernatural powers, and without cooperation, they won't be able to overcome him even in 100 years. Dr. Masami comes up with a plan to defeat Yuri. He plans to wait for Yuri on the mountain, while the police and Masamoto's men hide in the mountain, and as soon as Yuri appears, they will all attack him together to overpower him. Later that night, Dr. Masami goes to the office in the village, accompanied by Amy, her assistants, as well as Yuji and Tsuchi. Dr. Masami recounts the story from the beginning. He explains that a legend in the village says that thousands of years ago, a group of aliens landed on Earth. These aliens had supernatural powers, enabling them to create smoke spheres in the air. These spheres could make anything they touched disappear. The aliens had 6 fingers on each hand instead of 5, and their appearance was terrifying, with human-like bodies and bird-like heads. These aliens occupied Maruka village, forcing its inhabitants to worship them. They even married the village women to produce deformed offspring, who were called the window openers. These beings resembled humans but inherited the aliens' powers. As their powers developed, a jewel would appear on their faces, distinguishing them from humans. Jewels also appeared on their hands, which transformed into 6-fingered alien hands. Every year, the aliens would visit the village at a specific time, but their visits suddenly stopped. This led the villagers to create a festival called Tanabata, hoping the aliens would return during the festival. The festival continued for over 1,000 years, but the aliens never returned to Earth. However, they maintained contact with the Maruka villagers through dreams. Those with supernatural powers would receive their missions through these dreams, and if they delayed completing their tasks, the dreams would turn into nightmares. Dr. Masami also mentions that he conducted research on the mountains in the village and discovered that they were created by the aliens. Contrary to what the villagers believed, the emblem on their flag, thought to depict an extinct bird, was actually an alien symbol resembling a bird. After extensive research, Yuri discovered that the smoke spheres were time portals. They could make anything they touched disappear and transport it to space. Although this concept seemed illogical, Yuri was convinced of it. He intended to make the mountain disappear and enter the portal himself to travel to space and live with Tsuchi's mother there, as Yuri believed she was still alive. The next day, Dr. Masami and his companions waited for Yuri at the mountain peak. After a few days, Masamoto decided to withdraw from the mountain, believing they were wasting time. As Masamoto and his men prepared to leave, they were suddenly attacked by gunfire, killing everyone except Masamoto. The shooter was revealed to be Yuri, disguised as one of Masamoto's men to avoid detection. Masamoto attempted to kill him, but before he could act, Yuri used his supernatural powers to kill him. Yuri then prepared a large smoke sphere above the mountain and warned Dr. Masami and his group, telling them they would die if they didn't leave the mountain. However, Tsuchi refused to leave, asking Yuri to take her with him because she believed the smoke spheres were portals to space, and she wanted to continue her life with her mother. Yuji stopped her, confessing his feelings for her and expressing his desire to live with her. He convinced her to leave the mountain so they could move away from the village and build a life together. As Yuri executed his plan, he moved the smoke sphere toward the mountain. The moment the sphere touched the mountain, both Yuri and the mountain disappeared. Thus, Yuri completed his plan, saving the world from his evil, allowing the villagers to return to their normal lives. A year later, we see Dr. Masami in the village, with Amy also living there alongside her teacher. The villagers had rebuilt the mountain after Yuri's disappearance. Yuji returned to the city, but visited Sochi regularly, and their relationship developed to the point where he confessed his love for her and asked her to live with him in the city. The series ends there. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. For more summaries, see you in the next summary. Bye.